박태우 TV broadcasting. It's 3:30 already. Half of the day has passed. And how are you doing today? Today, I'm also going to talk more on underdevelopment in South Korea's constitutional system and how are we to revise these kind of wrongdoings and how people will fight to secure full democratic procedures in South Korean political circle. So again, nowadays, all the writings and the opinions are here and there, spreading whether the Constitutional Court will decide, the laws which passed a few days ago regarding the investigative right of prosecuting authorities will be judged to be unconstitutional or judged to be constitutional. But actually, it is no doubt that this kind of unilateral legislation is insult to democracy, and it could be named as a tyranny of a majority. It is a pity that the outgoing Moon Jae-in administration and ruling Democratic Party of Korea have completed a legislation process to deprive the prosecution of its investigative powers, despite the strong opposition from the main opposition People's Power Party, as well as prosecutors, lawyers, professors, and opinion leaders of our society. So the Moon Jae-in administration key figures, including the ruling camp, cannot deflect criticism for railroading relevant bills through the National Assembly in an apparent attempt to prevent prosecution from investigating allegations of corruption and abuses of power, which was raised against the Moon Jae-in leftist government. And as was predicted, on last Tuesday, President Moon Jae-in promulgated the legislation in a cabinet meeting and allowing it to become a law which will take effect in 4 months' time. So before that time, Constitutional Court must review the unconstitutionality of the law itself. Unfortunately, it also calls for the complete deprivation of prosecutors all investigative powers that will be handed over to a to-be-created investigative unit resembling the U.S. Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, in 1 year or 6 months' time. But actually, regarding who will appoint the head of that kind of FBI-type new investigation agency, the ruling Democratic Party is also abusing power. Probably they want to have all the authority to appoint the head of a new investigation agency to be named by the ruling camp themselves. This is the problem. So the People's Power Party criticized the Democratic Party for attempting to protect the ruling elite from possible investigations of corruption and abuse of power just before Moon term's end in a few days, May 9th. So it is completely unconstitutional to neutralize the prosecution by taking advantage of its majority power. It's a tyranny of a majority in legislative politics. You know that the governing party, ruling party, has not done anything at all to have discussions with the opposition parties, nor has it made any effort to build a social consensus over the issue. what they did was only over the last 3 weeks' time to flex its muscle as a majority party with 171 seats in the 300th National Assembly. They used tricks and loopholes to get rid of obstacles to its unilateral legislative push. After a compromise proposal, which ruling party and opposition PPP have agreed about, it was dated back to April 22nd, something like that. Especially National Assembly Speaker Park Byung-seo coordinated the compromise proposal, as people's opinion was very, very fierce opposition from the agreement, caving in to mounting criticism for colluding with ruling Democratic Party in stripping the prosecution of its investigative power. So, People's Power Party retreated, from the original coordinated proposal made by Park Byung-seo, and they again tried to block the law from being passed in the National Assembly, which ultimately will be resulting in the weakening of the criminal justice system. It is to be recognized by an international community also as a tyranny of the majority. Absolutely, it will be. Also, it is a clear insult to the rule of law and our South Korea's democracy. So, ruling camp has trampled on the spirit of the National Assembly Act, which was revised in 2012 to block majority party from railroading bills through the assembly. Very unhappy, legislative insult to democracy. So it is up to the Constitutional Court as of now to decide whether the legislation is lawful or not. It is also very urgent to lay the legal groundwork to prevent a majority party from abusing its legislative power. But judging from the current attitude of ruling Democratic Party of Korea, it is quite clear that they will continue to abuse of legislative power with 171 seats in the National Assembly after they become a opposition party from ruling camp. So as of now, the ball is in a constitutional court now. It is so much apparent that the revised laws are fraught with a lot of problems. Lawmakers and high-ranking officials and bureaucrats will have a better chance of avoiding punishment, because prosecutors will be unable to investigate the allegations relevant to elections and public officials. So it is no doubt that President Moon Jae-in promulgated the bills with just 6 days left to his retirement. The main purpose was to prevent Yoon from vetoing them after becoming president. 10th May. So, judging from the current, police situation here, overburdened with a lot of, daily work and overloaded with, work, quite difficult, to investigate with efficiently and with, more expertise on certain cases. Victims will likely suffer from insufficient police investigations. So, as of now, Constitutional Court must rule against the revised laws, which is the only way blocking them from going into effect in 4 months' time. Because, opposition, People's Power Party asked the Constitutional Court to make a judgment on a competence dispute, arguing that Democratic Party employed an expedient that infringed the right of opposition party lawmakers to deliberate and vote on bills. Also, the Supreme Prosecutor's Office formed a task force last month examining the constitutionality of the laws. So, together with the Justice Ministry, they are expected to request ruling also on a competence dispute after the new government is inaugurated. So all the civic organizations, including the Professors Solidarity for Freedom and Justice, with 6,000 members there, from 377 universities across the nation. They filed a constitutional complaint saying that amendment violate the basic right of people. So it is at the courtyard of the Constitutional Court. The ball is in the court of a Constitutional Court. So they should hold hearings promptly, rapidly. So as of now, personally, I think that regarding these laws, the unconstitutionality of laws looks unquestionable. Unhappy political bargaining behind the scenes. You know that one Democratic Party lawmaker defected in order to join the Agenda Coordination Committee as an independent lawmaker, so that this kind of intentional defection to tip the scale of vote in the committee in favor of the bills to help ruling camp. We know that the Article 12 of the Constitution stipulate prosecutors as officials with authority to request warrant for arrest, detention, search for seizure. So a dominant view among legal professionals is that article means that request for warrant is based on the premise that prosecutors do investigative activities. And therefore, it goes against the Constitution to separate the investigation from the functions of prosecutors. So, I think, if judges of a constitutional court, read the meanings of this kind of constitutional spirit without prejudice, it will be judged to be unconstitutional, definitely, absolutely. And if the scope of a prosecutor's indictment must be limited to the range of police investigations, probably other crimes exposed in the process of investigations will likely be buried and covered. So, as of now, there are 8 justices of the Constitutional Court. Out of 9 justices, 8 justices were appointed during the Moon presidency. Also, it is generally analyzed that 5 of them are said to be left-leaning. I request, to the Constitutional Court to make a judgment of the constitutionality of the laws strictly from the viewpoint of the Constitution, free from ideology and partisanship. this is a cornerstone of democracy, to have a fair viewpoint of the Constitution. Also, this is the way to defend judicial justice and receive public trust. In a recent poll survey, more than 60% of the respondents opposed to revisions. We are watching how the Constitutional Court will make result regarding this kind of judgment. Ladies and gentlemen, and my fellow citizens living abroad and patriotic citizens, when lawmakers are elected, they vow to their voters in their district that they will respect the opinions of the general public, especially voters. If she is elected, after she or he gained support from them. But once he or she is elected, in a general election, their attitude changes all of a sudden, ignoring sometimes general public sentiment, ignoring like this the constitutionality of certain laws. This is the problem. Even though Yoon Suk-yeol government is to be inaugurated on 10th May, in 3 days' time, something like that. If this kind of legislative dictatorship continues, producing continuous insult to democracy, all the political conflict between newly inaugurated government and old legislative powers with 171 seats, they will become opposition from the 10th May, will produce all the classes, hurting the national interest of South Korea and people's basic right of democracy. So it is totally against the sound spirit of democracy. So it is a pity that I'm sorry to say that if we produce this kind of lawmakers and politicians continuously without good insight on democracy, without good personality in political characteristics, our democracy will be damaged, will be insulted continuously. So how shall we protect our basic right based on Constitution from this kind of legislative abuses and act of tyranny of majority in the Korean National Assembly? So I proposed several times through Park Dae-woo TV Hard Talk alert that probably when we revise Constitution in some time, we have to put one article definitely clear, which stipulate that disbanding of a National Assembly could be possible if 1/5 of South Korean people sign agreeing to disband the National Assembly, because politicians in the National Assembly are acting against the general interest of public and the general interest of South Korea. As of now, checking and balancing system of presidential office, judicial branch, and legislative branch are not properly functioning as we have watched now. So General Assembly will be happening in 2 years' time. So we have about 2 years' time of malfunctioning of National Assembly if ruling Democratic Party continues this kind of unethical and unpatriotic behaviors, without considering people's general sentiment. So this time, watching this kind of unhappy happenings in the South Korean politics regarding prosecution reform bill and the Criminal Procedure Act, something like that, we were so much disappointed, and many people are watching to the last minute that how Constitutional Court will decide whether to be judged as unconstitutional or unconstitutional. I hope, because both is in a constitutional court with prompt, reviewing process. Constitutional court, must, rule the case to be unconstitutional. This is the way, the last means to save falling South Korea's democracy. It is wrong, in a way, it is wrong for the Democratic Party to neutralize the prosecution by taking advantage of its majority power. The governing party has not done anything at all, having discussions with counterpart, with professionals, legal experts. This is not democracy. This is a far distant from deliberative democracy. Deliberative democracy must be based on this kind of talks, analysis, exchange of opinions, reviewing processes. But those who are not happening in the process of pushing ahead with this kind of undemocratic laws, we have to secure deliberative democracy fully so that people would be satisfied with the legislative process based on all the procedural laws agreed by the people to be okay, not violating the constitutional spirit. Well, today I again talked about the continuing insult to democracy in South Korea with a tyranny of majority in the Korean National Assembly. This must be stopped. This kind of illegal, undemocratic behaviors must be stopped. If they don't stop voluntarily, people should stop them. Either in a form of demonstrations or protest, or by utilizing all the means possible. Let's do it. Let's save South Korea's democracy. Okay? Thank you. This is Baktaew TV, Hard Talk Alert. I will get back to you next time. Goodbye.